Where do the Buffalo Bills fall into the early AFC landscape? I'm breaking that down for you today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, folks, welcome in. The Bills playing on Thursday night and then again on Monday night presents the opportunity for us to work in some different show concepts. Normally, throughout the course of the season, we have a very specific content plan that we follow that allows us to sufficiently cover the game that happened and get ready for the game that's coming. But there's an extended amount of time between week 2 and week 3 for the Buffalo Bills, so it gives us the opportunity to go off script a little bit and talk about some other things. And so my objective today is to consider where the Buffalo Bills fall into the overall AFC landscape through 2 games. And obviously there's a ton of season left to play out. Things change fast in the NFL. Think about already maybe how you perceive some teams right now compared to the way you felt going into the season. Things change fast in the NFL. But I think we have learned enough through 2 games to give us some type of idea as to what type of team the Bills are going to be and where they fall into this overall picture when it comes to the AFC. So we have 3 segments for you today. We'll start by talking about the Bills' path. Then we'll talk about the rest of the AFC East. And then, of course, we'll finish with the rest of the conference in general. Now, of course, I'm the host of the Locked On Bills podcast, daily podcast on the Buffalo Bills, but I also I host 2 other podcasts, Locked On NFL Scouting, a daily podcast on the entire NFL that I do with Kyle Krabs. Also, NFL First Read, I do that with Brett Whitefield of Fantasy Points, and we talk about the NFL, the whole NFL, through the lens of film and analytics. And so I say that to say that my focus in the work that I do is not just the Buffalo Bills. It's mostly the Buffalo Bills, but I have an understanding and I follow very closely everything that's going on in the NFL, and I think that positions me well to have these types of conversations. So let's do it. Let's talk about this Bills path. Buffalo's 2-0. Come from behind win over Arizona, convincing win over the Miami Dolphins. 2 very different football games, and I can appreciate that the Bills showcase 2 very different ways that they can win games. One where Josh Allen really kind of has to put on the cape and do it. One where the defense can make a bunch of big plays. The Bills will run the ball. Josh Allen just kind of, manages the game, and I think that's okay, right? You had 2 different scripts, and it's important to be able to win games in different ways, and that's what I really like about the 2 games the Bills have played to this point. But my prediction for the Bills this year was for them to go 11-6, and the very simple path to get to 11-6 was, well, go 4-2 in the division games, beat the Cardinals and Titans at home, and then just go 5-4 the rest of the games. It's never that straightforward. You win a game you're not thinking that you're going to win. You're going to lose a game that you don't expect to lose, and it takes on a life of its own. But I can say that my path to 11-6, which I think will probably win the AFC East this year, the Bills are more than on track, because I predicted, or I didn't predict, I said the path to get to 11-6 is go 4-2 in the division. Well, part of that equation was you split with Miami, you split with the Jets, you beat the Patriots twice, you're 4-2 in the division. Well, the Bills went into Miami and won. And as you know, I didn't predict that the Bills would go into Miami and win. And a lot of people really wanted to remind me of that, and that was a point of pride to let me know that I was wrong. Congratulations. I missed on a prediction. I hope that you never miss on a prediction either, but it happens, right? Predicting the future is hard. I had a lot of good process into that, and I'm glad to be wrong. Trust me, glad to be wrong. But point being that they're kind of ahead of the pace, right? I didn't have that down as a dub, and the Bills won that game. And so you can look at it one of two ways. The Bills are ahead of schedule, or their margin for error is a little bit better than it was going into the season. And either way, it's a good spot to be at 2-0. And so definitely on track to achieve the 11-6 mark that I thought they would. Maybe they could be better. We'll see. A lot of season to play out. But looking at this schedule moving forward, certainly being mindful of the Bills and their own necessity to improve and develop and evolve as a football team. Offensively, you're just kind of looking to build out this operation. A lot of good things to this point, some good rushing dynamics. Josh Allen's, I think, playing extremely mature quarterback. Like I think Josh is playing really well. His EPA per play right now, per dropback, is plus 0.48, number one in the NFL. And if he maintains that number, it's going to be the best season of his career. He's going to be the NFL MVP if he maintains plus 0.48. He was plus 0.11 last year. I mean, it would be an unbelievable season. Josh is playing good football. You can't look at the volume stats. Well, he goes 13-19 in week 2 in a game where he didn't have to do that much. You know, through 2 games, it's not going to look like he has these gaudy stats. But if you look at his efficiency metrics, oh my goodness, they're off the charts. And I think given the context of this offense, Joe Brady, his first full season as the OC, you got a reshuffled interior offensive line, all new receivers, right? There's a lot of new stuff going on. And so for Josh Allen to come in and be as comfortable as he's been, to see the field how he's seeing it, to make the decisions that he's making, it's very encouraging to me. We've seen Josh Allen have all the continuity in the world and start the season slow. Not the case for the 2024 version of Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills offense. Defensively, you just got to get healthy, right? Get healthy. And I think you've already showed a lot. Now, certainly you want to start games a little faster, perhaps, and you're concerned that the Bills could sustain more injuries, but get healthy and continue to build that out on that side of the football. But the bottom line is you're on a good course on offense and defense. So what's the schedule look like moving forward? Next up, you host the Jacksonville Jaguars on Monday Night Football, and the rest of the week we're going to talk all about that. Crossover Thursday, that happens tomorrow. My primer on Friday, and then Monday we'll get in here with final thoughts, predictions, banged up Bills. But the Jags are 0-2, and that looks like a sloppy operation. Very sloppy. Now, they could be 2-0 very easily, but I think they get in their own way. Very talented football team. Vibes are bad in Jacksonville right now. Bringing them to your place when you have a rest advantage. You like your chances. And you got 3 in a row on the road. Big AFC matchups. At Baltimore, Sunday Night Football. At Houston, 1 o'clock kick. At the Jets, Monday Night Football. Big stretch. I mean, really, I think these next 4 are all big AFC games. And Jacksonville and Baltimore are both 0-2. We'll talk a little bit more about Baltimore in a minute, but you still look at those teams as teams that have the stuff, right, to get it together and play better football down the stretch, right? That's what good teams do. They figure it out. They stack wins. They go on runs. You want to play good football. Every game starts, every game counts for 1/17 of the schedule, but the reality is you improve or not throughout the course of the season, and that's going to define where you ultimately land. So after that 3-game road stretch, Bills come back home to host the Titans. Feel good about that one. At Seattle. Tougher road opponent, right? You come back and host the Miami Dolphins. At the Colts, that feels manageable. And you bring Kansas City to your place for a 4:25 kick. Into a bye. Hosting San Francisco out of the bye, that doesn't look impossible. Then you go to the Rams. Boy, that team's in trouble, right? To the Lions, they certainly have their own issues to figure out. 2 at home, Patriots and Jets, and then you finish the season at New England. it's not a cakewalk, but it doesn't necessarily feel as overwhelming as maybe it did going into the season, especially with what you've learned to this point about the Buffalo Bills. So I feel very good about 10 wins. I feel great about 11 wins. And I think it's possible that they can do more than that. Obviously, it'll take on a life of its own, and things change quick. But I like where the Bills are positioned right now in terms of what they've shown us and what their own path forward is. Now, coming up on the other side of it, I want to look at the AFC East. Plenty of storylines when it comes to the Dolphins, the Jets, and the Patriots. We'll break that down for you on the other side of it, folks. Be sure to stick with me. Game days are extremely busy for me and my household. Got a couple of young kids, and it can be difficult for us to find time to cook, right, or get to the grocery store. Well, luckily, DoorDash is there for us. DoorDash is a food delivery app that brings me food from my favorite local and national restaurants right to my front door. We can get something from the convenience store if we need, batteries. I needed batteries literally this past weekend. I ordered some at DoorDash. They brought them right to my house. We love to get meals, or if we have some cravings from, want something from the gas station, they will bring it to our house. The convenience of DoorDash is unmatched. And I encourage you to allow it to bring convenience to you and your household. So check it out. We got a deal for you. Use my promo code LOCKEDFALL24 for 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. Limited time offer. Terms apply. Promo is not valid for orders containing alcohol. DoorDash, your door to game day greatness, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. Must be 21 or older to drink alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol available only in select markets. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we got a little something different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. Let's talk about this AFC East. The Bills have won it 4 years in a row, looking for a 5th. And they currently sit on top of the AFC East, 2-0. The rest of the division, 1-1. All 3 teams, 1-1. And as you know, nobody wins the division after week 2. So it'll take on a life of its own, obviously. But obviously the Bills in good position. And while the Bills certainly have their own challenges with their defensive injuries and evolving on offense and maybe shoring up that middle of the offensive line, is the vertical passing game going to start to really click? There's things for the Bills to work out. Tyler Bass and the kicking situation, do you trust it? They got their own issues. Boy, oh boy, so does the rest of this division. The team that I've identified as the biggest threat to the Bills is the Miami Dolphins. They have been the last few years. I thought they would be this year, but they're sitting at 1-1, and Tua Tagovailoa is on injured reserve. And they're 1-1, but boy, they could easily be 0-2. Jacksonville was about to go up 3 scores against them late in the third quarter. And Javon Holland made one heck of a play to punch out the football from Travis Etienne, who was about to cross the goal line. Miami recovers. The next play is an 80-yard bomb to Tyreek Hill, and the game really flipped in that moment. But they're 1-1. Tua's on injured reserve, and that means Skylar Thompson's going to be their starting quarterback. Skylar Thompson, it's his 3rd season with the team, but not a player that I would have a lot of confidence in. Didn't think much of him coming out of Kansas State. I don't think he's been particularly good in the preseason. Maybe he's had his moments. He's got some mobility, some gamer traits about him, but not a guy that you anticipate coming in and being a high-level executor of this Mike McDaniel offense. It's certainly a hit to their football team. And so, they're going to try to move forward with him for the foreseeable future. Offensive line certainly has some weak links. I'm not sure it's been overly limiting. I don't think that the Dolphins are 1-1 because of their offensive line, but certainly plays a role. I think they've shown some level of promise on defense, but still things to sort out there. And Tua's on injured reserve, so that means he's going to miss at least the next 4 games. And for the Dolphins, it's a pretty manageable stretch of games. But how big of a loss is your starting quarterback? I think pretty big, right? They go at Seattle this week. They host the Titans, at the Patriots, a bye week, and then at the Colts. Manageable stretch of games. If the Patriots, or excuse me, if the Dolphins had Tua, I'd expect them to win all 4 of those games. Without Tua, I'm not so sure. The first game that Tua is eligible to come back and play is against the Arizona Cardinals. The game after that's the Bills in Buffalo. I mean, it's a minimum of 4 weeks, but you feel like there's a bit of delicacy that the Dolphins have to handle this with. Spent a lot of ugly head injuries for Tua, a lot of ugly injuries in general. I'm sure Tua wants to get back out and play. Said he doesn't have any plans to retire. But we'll see, right? I think this is an early season off the rails a little bit for Miami. Potent football team. They got a big question with their most important spot, and that's their starting quarterback. The Jets are 1-1. Dismantled by the 49ers in week 1. Squeaked by the Titans in week 2. Will Levis makes a mind-numbing mistake that probably, if he doesn't do that and they just kick a field goal, probably puts that game on ice. Makes as silly of a choice as you can and opens up the door for the Jets to come from behind and beat Tennessee. But I don't think you can look at the Jets and be overly optimistic. The offense has been very modest. They scored 19 against the 49ers, and they got a garbage time touchdown at the end of the game with Tyrod Taylor as a quarterback. Scored 17 against Tennessee and won. They were under 270 yards of offense in both games. This is not a juggernaut, folks. And their defense, the defense has been the story for the Jets over the last few years. I think where you found a level of respect for the Jets has been, hey, you were 7-10 with Zach Wilson and a terrible offensive line. They've made strides to improve the offensive line, and Aaron Rodgers is a lot better than Zach Wilson. So that's the recipe, but their defense to me isn't the same as it's been. The strength of that unit has been the deep defensive line rotation, and it doesn't look good right now. And one of their better players, Jermaine Johnson, just went down with an Achilles injury after this whole Hassan Reddick situation, which is completely unresolved. They're rostering 3 undrafted free agents on the defensive line. It's not a good thing. And so I just don't know that their defensive line is what it's been. And I think that impacts every piece of this defense. They got talent on the back 7. There's no question. But it's also fair to point out that the strength of this defense, the straw that stirs the drink, has been the defensive line, and it's not nearly as deep as it's been the previous 2 seasons. Meanwhile, their offense has not necessarily been a juggernaut. I'm sure, look, Aaron Rodgers, rusty, everything's new, right? I get it. You've scored less than 20 points in both of your first 2 games and under 270 yards of offense. All right, so the Jets look like they're going to be world beaters. How about the Patriots? 1-1. Surprisingly beat the Bengals in week 1. They were +2 in turnovers. The Bengals couldn't stop the run. The Bengals had some big-time drops in that game. They didn't have T. Higgins. And they lose to Seattle in overtime. A competitive game. I think the reality with the Patriots is that they're not a very good team, but they're certainly no pushover. It feels like the recent Patriots teams that we've watched the last 2 years. They run the ball, very limited passing offense, fairly stout on defense. They got some good-looking young players on defense. Defensive end Keon White looks like a nice player, and Christian Gonzalez is back and healthy, and he looks like a stud at corner. So I think that's the type of team that they're going to be. And if you wind up falling into their type of game script, you'll have a long day. You've seen that happen to the Bills last year. But certainly a manageable opponent. I don't think that they're going to be a competitive team to really threaten for a winning record or make noise in the playoff race. But also not a pushover. Not a pushover. And the Bills get them to me, the 2 of the last 3 weeks of the season's like not the great time to play the Patriots. They're going to be, playing this spoiler role. Probably Drake May is their quarterback at that point in time. They'll kind of learn a lot about who they are, what they can and can't do. And I with a first-year head coach in Jerod Mayo, I feel like they're probably going to be playing inspired football late in the season, especially with the chance to, kind of take it to the Bills. So I think the Bills should handle those games, but again, no walk in the park. But the Bills on top of the AFC East, and I like their chances of that being true at the end of the season as well. Injuries obviously will dictate a lot of that. So that's the AFC East. On the other side of it, folks, let's look at the rest of this conference where the Bengals and the Ravens are both 0-2. Texans, Chargers, Chiefs, Steelers join the Bills as 2-0. We'll get into that here on the other side of it, folks. Be sure to stick with me. Buying tickets can be stressful, but it doesn't have to be, and it's not if you have the Gametime app. Gametime is the fast and easy way to purchase tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. I love the app. It's awesome. It's easy to navigate. They give you flash deals. They give you a seat view. You can look at the prices as all-in. You turn on the all-in pricing, so that way you have no surprise fees coming at the end. But I also love this. They specialize in last-minute tickets. You just saw the Sabres schedule. The Bills have games coming up. There's concerts that are being announced. It's hard to know today if you can go to those things. Well, the great news about Gametime is they specialize in last-minute tickets. You can purchase tickets right up until the day of the event and find great deals. So check it out. Download the Gametime app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Let's examine the rest of this AFC. And I want to start by putting something out there that I think is important. Since the NFL expanded the playoffs to 14 teams in 2020, 0-2 teams are not making the postseason. 32 teams since 2020 have started 0-2. Only 2 of them made the postseason. The Texans last year, the Bengals in 2022. That's a rate of 6.3%. So if you're 0-2, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble. So let's talk about the rest of this conference. In the AFC North, the Steelers are 2-0. The Browns are 1-1. The Ravens and Bengals are 0-2. So you look at I looked at the Ravens and Bengals as both playoff teams. And the data doesn't suggest that they're going to be playoff teams. Certainly not both of them. It'd be very unlikely if they both went. The Steelers are 2-0. I'm not sure how much that is indicative of what type of team they really are. They're able to beat the Falcons in week 1, which was a team that you could tell was still trying to find its footing with so much new there. They beat the Bo Nix Denver Broncos in week 2. The combined score of those games, 31-16. They've scored 31 points in 2 games, and they've allowed 16 points. I think there's an inevitability to the Steelers being decent. But I don't know that they have enough juice on offense for me to really buy into them as a team that's going to make a lot of noise. Very good defense. Very, very good defensive line. Some nice secondary talent. Their linebackers are better than they've been. But I think they have some stuff to sort out on offense, and I don't know that their path – I mean, they always have this path. They play stout defense. They run the ball, and they're opportunistic, right? And there's an inevitability with Mike Tomlin that this team's going to have a reasonable floor. They're going to win 8 or 9 or 10 games. Are they going to be the type of team that scares you in the postseason? I don't think so. The Browns are 1-1. Deshaun Watson's a mess. Injuries all over the offense. Their tackles, Nick Chubb's not back. Receivers don't look like they're what they're supposed to be. But, I mean, really, it's about Deshaun Watson and the variance in which he plays, and I think that he's in a lot of ways prohibitive to winning. So I think they're one of the more talented teams in the NFL if they're healthy. I don't trust their quarterback at all. I think they're going to be a good team on defense, opportunistic on offense, but I don't see it with Deshaun Watson. It's been a real long time since he's played at a high level. And the Ravens and Bengals are 0-2. I think the Ravens have significant offensive line issues in 3 spots. Nobody talked about it. I did. I talked about it all offseason. Leaning into players with literally no resume in Voorhees and Daniel Falele and Roger Rosengarten, a rookie. I mean, I think they made a poor calculation with how they manage their offensive line. Congrats on getting Derrick Henry. I mean, Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, right? That's supposed to be a scary backfield. Well, does it matter if your offensive line stinks? And Derrick Henry doesn't look like he's got the same firepower that he's had throughout his career. Lamar Jackson's still funky as a passer. They're going to be a tough team, but they're 0-2 and they're in the hole. Bengals, I think I'm a little bit more encouraged with Cincinnati with how they played against Kansas City. I thought Joe Burrow looked decent. I thought he was victimized by drops in week 1, and I think they got some things to work out. Obviously, T. Higgins hasn't been part of their equation yet. He hasn't played. Jamar Chase has missed all the offseason. He looks like he's a little slow to start. They got to figure out their run game. Defensively, they look okay. Run defense looks like it's a little shaky. But Ravens and Bengals both at 0-2. One of those teams is not going to make the playoffs. In the AFC South, the Houston Texans 2-0. The rest of the division is 0-2. I mean, Texans look like they're really solid. Not invincible, but CJ Stroud's playing well. Their offensive line looks pretty good. I think they're going to be a tough out. I think they're one of the better teams in the conference. Very potent operation. But then the rest of this division looks like, I mean, it looks rough. Colts, Jaguars, Titans, all 0-2. With the Colts, Anthony Richardson is not playing well. Sub 50% completion percentage. Feast or famine type player. Defensively, they cannot stop the run. They are getting blown off the – I mean, they are just struggling. They cannot stop the run. Teams are running all over the place. Jacksonville, sloppy, poor situational football team, super talented. Concerned about Doug Peterson. The more he gets his hands on things, the worse they get. And the Titans, I don't think they have the quarterback. Not for that style of offense. I think they're a good team on defense, but their defense wore down. Last 2 games, they've had a punt block the last 2 games. Sloppy operation with a high-variance quarterback. I don't trust them. AFC West, the Chiefs are 2-0. The Chargers are 2-0. And look, the Chiefs with 2-0 with wins over Baltimore and Cincinnati. They got to feel great about that, although those teams are both 0-2. But the Chiefs look like they're going to be just fine. Yeah, in it to the end. I look at kind of the top of the AFC. I think Chiefs. I think Texans. I think Bills. I think those are the 3 best teams in the AFC. Chargers are 2-0. I don't know what to think of that. I mean, I think that team's got a lot of issues on defense, but they've given up 13 points through 2 games. Now, they played the Bryce Young Panthers in week 1. I'm not sure how much we could care about that. Stack another win in week 2, running the ball extremely well. J.K. Dobbins playing out of his mind. A little bit more out of Quentin Johnson than maybe we expected. We'll see. There's, it's got to play itself out. But if that defense is going to be reasonable, which I didn't think it would be. I thought they had too many holes at defensive tackle, linebacker, in the secondary. So far, it looks pretty good. Raiders are 1-1. I think they'll be an average team. Stout on defense, opportunistic on offense, but also limiting on offense. Antonio Pierce looks like he's got a little bit of a conservative mindset. We'll see how that evolves. They're 1-1, and then Denver's 0-2, and they look bad. Defense doesn't look good, and Bo Nix doesn't look like he has much command of that offensive operation. And so I don't really look at them as much of a threat. Bills, Texans, Chiefs. I think that's the class of the AFC. Those, to me, are the teams to beat. And we'll see. I mean, some of these teams are going to figure it out. Some of them aren't. But it doesn't look as daunting. The Jets don't look as good. The Dolphins don't look as good. The Browns look rough. The Ravens and Bengals are 0-2. Jaguars, yikes. We'll see about the Chargers. Keeping an eye on that team. So there you have it, folks. AFC Landscape through 2 games tomorrow. Crossover Thursday as we start to get ready for this Monday night matchup between the Bills and Jaguars at Highmark Stadium. Don't miss anything, folks. Make sure you come on back. Make sure that you rate, review, share, and subscribe. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And look forward to catching up with you again real soon.